Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. Today's episode may have a little bit extra noise than usual. I have just moved to a new house and forgot to close my windows in my new office. So you may hear trucks and buses and the occasional seat as I shift around in my chair. I apologize for the extra noise and have learned to close the windows next time we are podcasting. Enjoy the show. All right, so last episode, Rebecca and I started our discussion on body image and spent pretty much the first episode. I think you can obviously jump in discussing our own relationship with our bodies, kind of telling our own story, which is important if we're going to discuss body image, because I think unless you've been there and have had to deal with it in some capacity, it's not a subject you would necessarily talk about, right? I think I mentioned my mother and my sister. That was not something that they ever really worried about. So for them, if I said, hey, do you have any issues with body image? My mother would be like, are you kidding me? Like, what do you mean?
There's probably a lucky few.
Yeah, and I think,
at least in my experience, there.
Yeah, I mean, and there's always going to be like my mom wishing that she could be like 5 pounds lighter, that kind of thing. But it's just kind of words, oh yeah, I wish I were 5 pounds lighter. But she doesn't really. It wasn't something that she ever put work into, put effort into. My mother wasn't she didn't care to go to the gym. She didn't worry about.
It didn't drain mental energy or time out of her life.
She didn't have, and that. So getting her involved in strength training for the past couple of years has been exciting because she's really grown to like it. It's the one thing that over the years is something that she's really stuck with. She did videos at home, Kathy Smith videos, and she did Taebo. Right. She and Charlotte love Taebo. She did Richard Simmons, so she.
That's going way back.
Yeah. She tried to get into it. She brought a treadmill, but it was just so boring for her. Exercise was always boring until she started the barbell training, and that she's found really. I want to say it excites her. She enjoys it. It makes her feel good. She feels way more useful. She's definitely stronger, and as a result, she feels more capable to do for herself. Visit with her grandchildren, play with them, really be involved with them, because she's got a 13-year-old, an almost 10-year-old, and a 4-year-old, right? So the feeling that she can play with them and have energy for them has come from training. So I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I think it was, here's a woman who, body image, that wasn't really a thing. Just kind of trying to find something that was going to make her feel better about herself and more useful, and has been the strength training. And I want to discuss that because that, I think, is the key to helping people, in a sense, overcome any issues that they might have with their body. And let's start talking about that. Like because we touched on the barbell, barbell training in our first episode. Let's go into more detail about how has that affected you? How's it affected me? How's it affected others that we know in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting because basically what you're talking about there with your mother's example of your mother is this concept that you and I have talked about a lot, that there seem to be two main drivers for people who are getting into exercise, right. Maybe three. One of them is aesthetics. What's their appearance like? How does their body image kind of usually is wrapped up in that somewhere.
Exactly.
I guess another driver would be health. Their doctor told them,
right.
Or they know that they need to do something. and the third is just functionality. And it's interesting, your mom's story, the way you tell it there, because it's like somebody who wasn't real motivated by body image or aesthetics, knew she needed to exercise, gave it a go here and there, but like this sort of abstract idea that this is better for my health, or something that's going to have a long-term payoff in terms of warding off, I don't know, heart disease or whatever, wasn't super motivating, or didn't compel her to stick with whatever she had chosen to do for a continued period of time. But this real world, kind of more not instantaneous, but like immediate,
no, I think you're right.
Functionality, this ability to do things and interact with the world in a way that allows you to feel confident and capable and able. That's what your mom connected to. And that, I think, for a lot of people who are caught up in body image, is a powerful mindset shifter.
Right.
So that instead of viewing exercise as something that is the way that they cope with their body image, or the way they address that, it gives them a different way to frame the exercise, a different way to conceptualize their body in terms of its ability instead of its appearance. And that, I think, is like a huge piece of what's appealing about barbell training for a lot of individuals, male or female, who are struggling with trying to be smaller, trying to be thinner, trying to have six-pack abs. It just shifts your focus and gives you something to feel positive about.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that she likes the socialization of training this way, because unlike in an aerobics class or even running, you can't talk to anybody. I mean, you're in a class and you're, having to like work and focus on the instructor, or if you're running by yourself. Here in the gym with the strength training, she goes and does a set of bench, and then she rests a little bit. She chit-chats with Deb and Susan, and then she goes and benches again, and then she chit-chats. And so there's this feeling of they go and they do their work, and then they get to talk to each other, and then they go and do some more work, and they get to talk to each other. And there's a feeling of, I've accomplished something today, and I've also been able to, do something that's involving other people too, who are like-minded, who are like me, and who are seeing the benefits. She definitely likes that. I mean, they all like that. They all like being able to come to the gym, and it gives them enjoyment. And I think for Susan and Deb, the women who are my mom's age, again, it's not about how they look. It's more about how they feel, and how much more capable and useful they are. And that's a big mind shift. And you see that with many people who come into the gym. People will come in, they're coming to get stronger. They want to lose some weight too. We focus on the let's get stronger aspect first. And, by and large, habits begin to change just over time, because there's a feeling of, wow, my body can really do this. I wasn't expecting that. That puts them into a different mindset of, why am I at the gym? Why am I here? I know that when I started strength training, so this was 10 years ago, and I've always been a gym rat. We discussed that in the first episode. But this time there was a different focus. The focus was on kind of, in the quote unquote, fixing myself, right? Fixing my back. So when I started, it was this, I've tried everything. Let me just give this a try. It wasn't so much to lose weight anymore. It wasn't to be thinner. I was in pain, and nothing had helped me. PT hadn't helped me. I had to stop dancing. Like, nothing was helping me. So let me give this a shot. And 2 months later, I felt better. I was seeing a difference in my body, because more so of what I could do, not what it looked like, but what I physically could do. The big kicker was, I had a picture taken of myself at the dance studio when I was there, and this was in May, and May was pictures for the dance performance, the end of the year showcase. So I was fooling around. I said, "Here, take a picture of me." So I posed, and when I got the picture back, I looked at myself, and it was such a shock to see myself. I looked tired. I had bags under my eyes. I had no ass. Like, I was kind of slumped over, like I wasn't standing tall. And I just thought to myself, that's what I look like. I didn't look strong. I looked weak. I looked sick. And most of it was because my back was in so much pain. I didn't feel good about myself. I couldn't stand tall because I literally couldn't stand. Fast forward a year later, after doing more of the program, strength training, and getting more and more involved with, even with coaching. I was still at the dance studio. It was my last year. I took another picture of myself in the same pose, in the same clothes, and it was like night and day. I'm standing taller. I'm fuller. I was filling out my jeans or the capris I was wearing. It was maybe a 5 pound difference, 5 or 6 pound difference. I don't know if it was more, it was like I put muscle on probably, but it was just the sense of I actually opened up. Like I was trying to take up all the space as opposed to taking up no space.
Well, and I mean, that kind of comes down to like how you frame your goals in the gym. Are they positive? Are they negative? Right. Like a negative goal is trying to be smaller, trying to be less than, right? Positive goal is how much more can I do? How much more can I, and it's just, it's a mindset shift. But yeah, that's why, I mean, like, the more female strength logo, you get loud and take up space. Yeah. Right. So, this idea, especially I think for women in our culture where you're supposed to be small and, men can spread out. You're not supposed to take up like 2 seats, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of interesting the way you describe that too, like fuller, taking up space in the world. Yeah. Having earned it.
Yeah. And I think that for so many years, I wanted to be, smaller, right? Take up less space. And now all of a sudden the mind shift was, holy crap, I want to take up all the space. Like this is the difference in how physically I felt, was certainly there, but mentally I'm eating, and eating became more enjoyable, and eating was for the work I'm doing in the gym, and eating was to provide me with the energy I needed to continue to add weight to the bar. And eating became, I have to eat. This is the only way I'm going to make progress and so in my case it was adding weight on my frame and adding weight to the bar, but going from 129 pounds when I started in May, and I'm 5'7", to 135 to 140, 45, 50, to kind of see that the growth like physically, and not freak out. I spent so long trying to lose weight, and now I'm literally putting weight on, actively trying to add weight.
Over what span of time? Like, what's the time frame for that? Like, how many?
5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
Because that's the sort of thing too. That's not a change that's going to happen in someone's mind overnight. Like, there's almost, I think, with a lot of people, like, I don't know, you want to call it an aha moment, but like sort of a quick realization about how good it feels to have positive goals in the gym, and to come in each time and kind of like surprise yourself with what you're able to do. And that's pretty instantaneous. But as far as like what happens to an individual's body in the process, and it fills out and the number on the scale may change, that is a mental hurdle, I think, that takes a little bit longer, because for whatever reason, people often have these, whatever you want to say, irrational love affairs with certain numbers on the scale when they're talking about their weight. Like you're talking about, there was some magic number that supposedly your dance instructor had told you weren't supposed to weigh more than, and people seem to latch on to these arbitrary numbers and say, this is my tipping point. If I weigh more than this, I'm going to be unhappy. If I weigh less than this, I'm going to be happy. And it doesn't really work like that. Like the ability that someone has to feel capable, durable, successful, useful, functional, satisfied with themselves in the real world is not connected to the scale weight, right? The scale weight, what does that basically just reflect? How the force of gravity, how much force that gravity is pulling you down towards the earth. Like, that doesn't really have that much bearing on how you feel in terms of your ability to interact with the world, but we place these artificial
We do.
importances on these just random numbers. I actually, for a long time, didn't even have a scale in my house. Like, I was very obsessed with that for a while in middle school and high school. Like, I'd weigh myself multiple times a day. And then when I got a little bit older and stopped focusing on the scale weight, but started focusing instead on a positive goal, like running related, what was my time on a mile, what was my time on 5 miles, like that kind of focus, I realized that having a scale around for me was not healthy.
Right.
And so I just never had a scale.
Right.
Like my roommate in college, the one that my first year, you know, we were talking the last time, she'd do the laxatives. She was exercise bulimic. She'd eat a whole pizza and then not eat for days. She was on a scale a lot, and I saw her behavior, and I was like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be, you know, tied to a certain number. So I just didn't have a scale. And I got to the point, like, when I had kids and I had to, like, fill out whatever, you know, health form, and it was like, what does your child weigh? I have to send them to the neighbor's house.
Because there's no scale.
There was no scale. So they'd go next door to the neighbor's house all the time when they were little, like elementary school age. And eventually my neighbor got sick of it and gave me, like, a hand-me-down scale. And she was like, I was like, I don't really want this. But, like, it just kind of got shoved in a corner. And then, like, when the forms had to be filled out, that's where...
But it's hard. I mean, I wrote an article a few years ago about the scale, and that the scale does not define who you are. And that's simply because I finally realized what the scale was to me. And it had everything to do with my husband. I mean, it had everything to do with Diego, who thinks in very, you know, matter-of-fact, mathematical, scientific terms, you know. Now touchy-feely, that's me. I'm the touchy-feely person. And it was, this is a measurement tool, Emily. This is nothing more than a tool to know, are you moving in the right direction? Are you? And when I finally...
It's like a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be the whole thing.
And that takes very, very long to understand and accept. So it doesn't happen overnight. And I hope people, you know, who are listening to this understand that, like, it's okay to be a little concerned, because we have it in our minds, as you said, there should be a certain number. There's a delicate number, and we make it up. We don't know what that number is.
Well, I mean, we make it up, but there's also things like BMI, where you're like your height and your weight.
And for somebody who's sedentary,
correlate to indicate something about your health. And powerlifters struggle with that all the time, like trying to explain to your doctor, no, I'm not unhealthy. I'm just heavily muscled.
And that's you know, something that we struggle with. Of course, you and I discussing it with people, because I mean, someone like when Diego goes to times he's been to patient first for various things, and they weigh him. You know, and he's 5'11", and he's 185 to 190 pounds, a little bit less now because he's been stressed from the move, so he's accidentally lost 10 pounds. Accidentally. But he's a slender guy with a lot of more muscle and weight on his frame, so he has to work very hard to keep that. And anybody who looks at him would never say, oh, this man's overweight or obese, but according to the BMI and according to his height and weight, he is. He's overweight, which you kind of go, well, that's hysterical.
You look at Diego and, like, that's
crazy. But
crazy.
for a 5'11" guy who's 190 pounds, who is sedentary and maybe diabetic, it's a different person. Two different people can weigh the same and look completely different and have completely different, you know, statistics. So when I learned to use the scale as a tool, it's made it much easier for me to address that with my own clients who have come to me and decided to either gain weight or lose weight. I tell them, you have to weigh yourself. It's once or twice a week, same time, same day. But I say it matter-of-factly. It's like, this lets you know, are you moving in the right direction? It's a guide. It's a guide for you. And when you present it that way, and hopefully also if you're dealing with somebody who's, you know, not really, doesn't have issues, because if I were to deal with somebody who has issues, I'm going to send them to somebody first who can really help them, a professional, right? I'm not going to deal with that. And we shouldn't. But I have a client who she's been looking to lose some weight. She's doing really well in the gym. We've been working on her eating, and she's down like 5-6 pounds. She just added protein. I didn't tell her to do anything but add more protein to her diet, and she's down a couple pant size, and she's down a couple holes in her belt. She's using the scale, and she's happy. She's finally seeing the process work. But that's somebody who was already kind of coming in with the idea of like, I'm here to work and make some changes, and I'm going to follow, what I'm going to follow what Emily says. But somebody who's been yo-yoing, let's say, a lot,
right.
That's going to be a different person. That's going to be somebody different who has to really learn what does the scale really mean.
Yeah, it's like people stand on the scale and somehow it translates into this is weighing my self-worth.
Yes.
As opposed to just a number or a tool or a piece of the puzzle.
It's that is such a hard thing for people to understand. Because I had to work hard to find that. I did. It was not easy. But now, if I ever decide to, that I want to cut down and lose some weight, that scale comes out. And I'm on it 3 times a week, and I'm jotting it down, and I'm keeping track of it, and it just becomes a measurement tool like anything else. And it's the first time that I can say in how many years, where it doesn't affect me. That number tells me either that I'm moving in the right direction, or I've gone off track, or whatever. It's just a number. And I wasn't that way 25 years ago. Right? That number did define who I was, as of course breaking down the doctor's office when I was 15
right.
years old.
Right.
So going back to strength training. So what is it about strength training, do you think, that changes people's mindsets when they have one idea of what they should look like or weigh, and you get them to begin strength training? What are the changes that have you seen that have occurred in people, or even in yourself? I mean, I kind of talked about what happened with me, but what about you? Because you were a runner, and then you became a person, and then you were a personal trainer before you became a strength coach. And I think that's, those are two different, you're kind of growing from one field to another field. What are some...
I mean, now I'm like sidetracked trying to think about me, like trying to remember what that was like for me. But I mean, like, I think the idea of positive goals was definitely sort of novel, right? Like the other than times for running, I wasn't measuring any of my other exercise. Like I hadn't been running competitively for probably say 20 years before I came to 5x3. So like for 15, 20 years, any form of exercise was really more of like a stress release, a way of preemptively coping with any insecurities about body image. Like I already took care of that today. I don't need to worry about, whatever, because I've already exercised.
Right.
So that kind of thing. And like any of the exercise that I was doing wasn't really measured. There was no, it was like a check off the box. Right. But not like, oh, I've seen improvement.
Sure.
And so that way of reconceptualizing exercise again, competing with myself, seeing what I could do, seeing how much stronger I could get week to week if I was training and eating properly, was reinvigorating. Like that was a nice positive change. And like I came into it actually probably pretty low body weight, low body fat, under muscled, because I'd been, I was coming off an umbilical hernia surgery.
Right.
So, there were some body changes, but I was maybe smaller than I was used to being initially. So I wasn't heading into any kind of uncomfortable territory in terms of body image or body size or scale weight or anything like that. it was all sort of part of a healthy rebuilding process after a surgery. And I've had, a client in particular who had written about this for me, where she was sort of living in that like body weight obsession territory for a while, size 2 or smaller for clothing. And just how liberating it felt to her to be able to think of her exercise as something that was making her stronger and better and more durable or capable, and not something where she was always trying to be smaller. And just that big mindset shift that it just can feel so, just like liberating. Yes. It's like a weight off your back when you put the barbell weight on your back.
Exactly. No.
So, I mean, I think initially that's probably the biggest change. Just that sense of here's what I can do, sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, and I think people, I mean, it's always says it, it may sound a little cheesy to say, oh, it's so empowering, but it is. And
totally is.
And especially for someone who is, and I say for women, but for men too, especially when you've obsessed so much over, how you look and your self-worth and how you look, and it becomes all of a sudden you as a person and the how functional you are. That's very empowering. You feel more the confidence and the self-esteem that comes that now somebody embodies is just, it blows you away.
And I think along those lines too, like, I mean, not to say that those mindset shifts wouldn't also occur for men, but I think they're particularly profound for women, because I think our culture tends to emphasize or value a woman's appearance rather than her capability, especially physical capability. There's always like, I go to the Tractor Supply, I'm buying whatever, turkey feed, pig feed, ma'am, can I help you with that? You go to the grocery store, they ask you if you need help with your grocery bags, right? There's this, and I don't know, I'm not a guy, I don't think I've ever been at the grocery store where they've asked my husband those questions.
No.
Maybe guys get asked those questions, but I don't think
I think it's rare.
So, and so like to have this new knowledge of how you are able to interact with the world and be able to size up a situation ahead of time and know, oh, I 100% could sit in the emergency exit seat of this airplane because that door only weighs, whatever, it was 65 kilos or whatever it weighs. It's like, that's way less, like my deadlift is more than that, no problem. So to be able to understand how you can physically interact with your environment. And I think guys learn that as they grow up. They're expected to help out with things around physical tasks around the house in a way that maybe girls aren't asked unless you're in our house and you get asked anyway.
Right. No other men.
Shut up and carry the feedback.
No other men around. It's just four girls. They have to get it. Yeah, no, I'm smiling and thinking because every time, like times I've been to the grocery store and I was there one day and I had my headphones on and I see this older woman, I should say elderly woman, and she's trying to, she's looking at the case of water and you can see that she wants to be able to put that water into her cart, but she can't. And she's kind of trying to catch my eye and I'm, over there shopping and I'm putting stuff in, and finally I walk by her and I see her turn to me and say something, so I take off my headphones and she says, "You seem to know what you're doing. Can you pick up that case of water and put it in my cart?" And sure enough, I did it for her and she was so thankful. But it was the acknowledgement that you know what you're doing instead of looking for a guy to ask. I brought the other day, I had to take back 3 12-packs of ginger ale. Diego had gotten the wrong ginger ale. So I had to. So it was like, three. So the boxes, right? So I just put them all up, loaded them onto my arm. I had 2 up on my left arm, and I was holding one in my right hand. And I walk into the Safeway, and I'm walking into the customer service as I'm putting down the cases. One of the cashiers is like, "Oh, hey, muscles." And I'm thinking to myself, this is like, these are some just 12-pack cans of soda.
Yeah,
but that's
interesting.
not what people do. People don't carry shit. They put it in their cart and they roll it in. I don't have time for this.
This is going to be rated G.
But people don't do that. And any chance I get to carry all my bags to the car, right? There's all that. Emily makes one trip. I make one trip. I don't make 2 trips. I make one trip. I will Sherpa all those bags, to the car before I...
So, but wait, let's go back to that, because that's interesting, because that kind of situation where you're just going about living your life, doing your thing, you're capable of doing something, and then somebody makes a comment like, ooh, muscles, is not the same thing as, oh, you're strong, right? It's an observation about your body's appearance as opposed to your body's ability.
I don't know.
And
I think she wasn't looking, I was wearing a t-shirt. I think she just thought, it was like, oh, muscles as in you're strong. Like you must have muscle in order to carry those cans. That's what I heard. It wasn't.
Yeah, that's interesting because I hear it a different way, but that may also be because, if I'm, because like whatever, I'm working in a gym and I'm in a tank top, and like people there often, to be clear, not at 5x3, but at a different gym where people are maybe less focused on strength training, their comments are always more along the lines of, oh, you look a certain way, fill in the blank, or look at your muscular arms, or look at your, and I'm like, that irritates me because that is not why I'm training, and in fact, that's what I was trying to get away from. Right. And then people throw it back in, it feels that way. Like they're throwing it back in my face, trying to get me to refocus on what I don't want to focus on. And I always kind of just like blow it off. That's, whatever, I don't know about that, I'll say, but I'm just trying to get stronger.
I think that when people, are you talking about like men and women saying that, or just maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that,
I think people just don't know how to talk about other people's bodies.
They don't.
And I also don't think people should.
No.
And that's like a philosophical difference that I have with a lot of people. Like, I just don't think it's appropriate to be commenting on what someone else's body looks like.
Yeah, the only thing...
I feel like that's personal.
When I comment on someone's body, it's because I'm complimenting... If they have long arms... Right, I'll go, oh my God, you're going to be a great deadlifter, or I'll say, that's why you're a great deadlifter, or or someone.
Okay, but that's like you and me being like weird and geeky about lifting, because I'll look at someone and be like, dang, that torso, you must be.
That's what I mean. I'll say some.
I was like, do you like squat? You love squat, don't you?
So I look at a body now. I look at bodies now, and I see deadlifters, squatters, pressers. Benchers,
Or like I was telling you before, like we're in the line at the Trader Joe's and I see the guy walk by with the thighs, and I was like, dang, he does not skip leg day. He's not one of those bodybuilders.
So I think that what you're even at a gym environment, people are seeing something that they may want themselves, right? They may see, wow, she's got really muscular arms. I wish I had those arms, but they don't. And they don't.
Like a lot of times,
but they don't know how to say it the right way, or they see a woman. I'll say a woman, and it's not aesthetically what they would want it to see it in a woman, right? Whereas me, I'm always checking out like, oh, I got a vein. The vein's popping out of my arm, and like when I put my hand behind my head, I see the indentation in my tricep. I'm like, yes, finally. But not everybody. It's such this is where the subject of like, what does somebody look like, and does somebody have to look a certain way to be strong? And that's one of our topics. I'm looking down at our notes. How do our bodies change? And trying to explain to a female, even a male, but more female, like how quickly are they going to see changes in their bodies? I never tell anybody they're going to see changes in 2 weeks. You're not going to. You're going to feel different. You're going to feel stronger. You're going to stand taller. Your weights are going to be going up, and you're going to feel, pumped because, you got glycogen running through your body now because you're like doing something for your muscles. But you haven't built any muscle in 2 weeks. I mean, that takes time. Which that idea of like, oh, women can get bulky, which, God, that's a whole other subject, is just so, I don't want to say stupid or dumb, but it's just,
no, but
it's blown out of proportion. It's blown out of proportion.
Right, like the classic joke little, I don't know, not meme, but little joke video that gets circulated is like, there's the woman at the gym in her gym clothes, and she goes and puts her hand on the heavier dumbbell, and then all of a sudden, like it switches, and it's, some huge, Brian Shaw type guy in the same
right. But then there's that. So I pulled up one of the quotes that you sent me, and I kind of want to read it if I may. So this is a quote from a Breaking Muscle article, breakingmuscle.com. Quote, in our modern mass media controlled culture, both males and females are bombarded from pre-adolescence with supposedly desirable body images. For girls, the ideal is all too frequently the appearance of a fashion model. I've talked to lots of people who are confused about what, quote, strong looks like. And it's usually because they are conflating weightlifting or powerlifting or strongman with bodybuilding. And then check these articles out if you think strong looks like the guy or gal in the Abercrombie swimsuit ad. So yeah, what does strong look like? You can say, oh, she doesn't look strong. He doesn't look strong because are you supposed to have a certain body look to you in order for you to be strong? Because I know plenty of people who are effing strong, like genetically gifted, and you would not even look twice at them.
Right. Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with their appearance. It is they physically have that strength but muscle.
But see, and this is interesting to me too, because this is how I started down this rabbit hole. Like I started thinking like, well, is strong, like what part of speech is that, And I was thinking maybe it was an adverb, because in my mind, strong has to do with an action.
Right.
I geeked out and I looked it up, and it's actually an adjective, which means it describes a noun, describes a person, but it's having power to move heavy weights. So being strong, the definition of, even though it's an adjective and it applies to a noun, it's describing the ability to move heavy weight or perform physically demanding tasks. It's a noun that can do something, right? So you're producing an action.
Right.
Whereas opposed to like beautiful or appealing or, that has to do with optics. That has to do with somebody else viewing you or viewing yourself in a particular way. So it doesn't have to do with what you can do. And I mean, to me, that's like one of the big shifts that happens in mindset when you start doing barbell training or strength training, is that your focus shifts from beautiful or attractive or aesthetic or optics to strong. And that's why I struggle against this, like when people say, oh, you look this way, or they talk about my appearance or talk about muscles, or and people don't have any idea what strong looks like. And I think it's also very funny that the concept of what strong looks like is based on what bodybuilders and physique people have created, and that is actually modeled after cartoons, right? Like after comics, like the like the old comic books, like the superheroes, right? And so it was like not even at that point something that was necessarily viewed as a realistic appearance,
right?
But that's what people have strived for. Is that the right word?
Strived. And I think that the quote, what does strong look like? If they're conflating with, strength training, weightlifting, with bodybuilding. Bodybuilders spend a lot of time in the gym working individual body parts over and over again. They spend a lot of time on their dieting down so that every single muscle comes through, right? Every single, sinewy.
Well, and trying to get things
balanced, right?
So, if you naturally are stronger on your one side than your other,
Right.
then you've got to.
They're probably strong. Sure, they have strength, but their sport is not strongman. Their sport is not powerlifting. They're not looking for the heaviest amount of weight to lift. They're looking for the best traps, the best lats, the
Right.
best triceps. They're going for the look, the aesthetic look, the appearance. And that's why when women, especially women, look at those female bodybuilders or even female physique, models or bikini even, and they see muscle. They're seeing very little fat, for one thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're down to like 7% body fat, or not 7%, that's men. 16%, 17% for women, right? Maybe even less than that. That's a very fat-free woman.
You're talking about just like living in the essential body.
Yeah, you can't survive like that. Like after their show, that's over.
Well, and that's another thing that like the average person doesn't understand either, is that is not where those people live all the time. They diet down and dehydrate to the point where they've got those really defined muscles for the photo shoot or for the contest. And then afterwards, they go and eat 8 bowls of cereal. It's
like I did when I dieted down for my photo shoot in 2013, and I ended up eating 2 bags of Michelle's granola after my photo shoot because I was starving. Yeah. My insides were eating me up. It is not. You cannot sustain.
But it's like the day of your show, your contest, your photo shoot, like nobody's trying to say like, okay, are you going to be able to perform at your physical peak on this particular day? You probably already hit that, and then but like for a strength-based sport, you need to be at peak physical condition on that day.
So bodybuilding aside, that's not what we're trying to do as strength coaches. That's not what. That's not.
But even just in general, like gym language, like the idea of fit, because I've encountered this same misconception about appearance and fitness as well. Back in like my more running days, like I would run 5 miles minimum, probably 6, 7, a lot of times 7 days a week, and I just don't have like a body type that, like you're talking about with Diego, like more of an ectomorph, really naturally lower body fat, naturally leaner. I'm sort of in the middle. And, at a point in my life where I was running tons, and we were out with someone else who just naturally has a body type like that. And one of my husband's friends who was visiting looked at the other individual who casually exercised but just had a naturally leaner frame, and was like, wow, she's really fit. And I just was like, oh my God, what does that mean? She looks fit. She's got lower body fat than I do. Like, you want the two of us to get into like some distance race or something? How are you measuring this fitness thing? It's a subjective concept in the same way that, bulky is subjective. So fit, strong, those are more performance-based.
Yes.
But we use those terms to describe appearance. And I think that's confused a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It annoys me.
No, I've on more than one occasion had somebody come to the gym, and they're interested in strength training, they're curious at barbell work, but they don't want to get bulky. And I have to just say bulky. Let's talk about that term. And I'll say, well, look at me. And I'll say, do I look bulky? Well, no, you're long and lean. I said, I do this. What is bulky? It's not a bad word. You're talking about muscle. And I kind of try to educate the person on, well, let's talk about, what do you think bulky means? Well, I said, well, yes, that's, there's fat over top of muscle. If someone has more fat than
sometimes not even over top of muscle, because there's plenty of people who've gotten bulky from cupcakes.
Yes. I mean, I look at
that means bulky.
The word bulky, it's not a negative word to me. It's negative for many people, and I should say definitely for many women. It's not a negative word for me. And I try to take that time to address and listen to what they say, and then try to educate them on, well, what's actually happening when you strength train, and what's really going on, and what does bulky really mean to you. And then sometimes people will kind of agree with me and realize, oh, yeah, I thought it was one thing, and I'm thinking, but you're saying this, and I'm looking around the room and seeing all these different people, and then some people just don't want to hear that, and they go somewhere else because they don't want to look a certain way, whatever that way is. And I can't even get into people's heads sometimes when it comes to that, because there's this, as you said, they're looking for something. It's a look, and I don't know what that look is. Because
and that's, I generally,
and that's a hard thing to sell.
Yeah, I generally steer away from that just because I think that's so muddled, appearance related. Because I get what you're saying about bulky not being a negative word. It's a way of trying to convey a concept about body size or whatever.
Right.
But I think the way it gets used is attached to judgment. And so in that regard, I dislike that word, right? Because I think generally people are using it in a way to that what they're trying to do is convey a negative judgment on something, and that they don't want that for themselves, or they might think that about somebody else. Maybe they would say that, but they would try and play it off. But it's just that's why I just feel like people shouldn't talk about other people's body in terms of what it looks like. Yeah. Unless they have been invited to do so.
Well, the problem is,
if you're in a bikini contest, if you're in a physique contest, you have invited commentary about the appearance of your body. If you're going through your life, if you're lifting your weights at the gym, to me, I'm focused on performance. I'm focused on what the person is able to do, not on how they look while they're doing it. Because people look pretty stupid when they're lifting heavy weights if they're actually pretty heavy.
I blame magazines for all that.
Yeah.
I blame the magazines. I blame media. I blame people. Other forms of exercise. I'm not going to name anything.
I'd name them.
But
choose the way you want your body to look, long and lean.
I blame the bar classes. I blame even some yoga, but mainly the bar classes, because they have they've made exercise into, as we're talking about, more about aesthetics, more about how you look and being judged and judging yourself
that's also,
and judging other people.
Selling on fear
and they're
insecurity.
Trying to sell. Exactly. And I blame them, because that's the word bulky comes from that. You don't want to look like her. Mm-hmm. She's got muscles.
Yeah.
You want to look like her. See how long and lean her muscles are? More so, she has no muscle. She's just a, there's just nothing to her. And if you touch her arm, it just goes and squishes. Because there's nothing there. But she's slim. Whereas she's not slim. It's it is, you're right, it's a judge thing. At least when I try to get the word bulky kind of not looked at as not negative, it's more of who's to say that having muscle is not a bad thing? It's a good thing. This is what it provides for you. This is why having strong bones is important. Again, that's not sexy. And so, I've been trying to figure out I should say this. Most people who come to the gym aren't coming. The ones who stay don't have that in their mind.
Yeah. Well,
the ones who go away, they're not ready. They're not ready for that kind of commitment, because it plays into their fear of what they've been hearing in the media about, well, if you strength train and you use a barbell, you're going to look like the Hulk.
Right.
And so they just abandon it.
Too, the role that fear plays, because it plays a role in the selling of certain types of exercise or marketing of certain types of exercise to people on an appearance base. But also, like you're talking about, the people who are going to decide to walk away from strength training and all of the benefits that it has to offer, they're walking away based on fear of something they haven't even done yet, right? Because the bottom line is strong doesn't look the same on everyone. That's why it's not an aesthetic judgment.
Exactly.
That's why when you actually look at what the definition of strong is, it really gets down to a performance definition, an ability definition. And so somebody who is strong and can lift, if everything else is equal, they're lifting the same weights, they're the same, height. Some of how that looks on one person, that ability to lift this amount on a deadlift or to squat this much on one person is going to look different than it looks on someone else, just based on things like, ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph, their lever lengths, all of those things. So you don't know how strong is going to make an individual look. There are some general guidelines, some sort of trends. But like how it looks on a particular individual isn't something that's predetermined.
Yeah. There's nothing more appealing to me than a woman coming into my gym who, when she comes in, maybe has a preconceived idea about, well, I'm here to lose weight and strength training is going to be good for me. And, when can I get rid of this flab from my arm? And then 2 weeks later, 100 pounds is on the bar for a deadlift. She's pulling it for a set of 5 and she's like, that was easy. And that was my goal. Yeah. And literally it's been 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks. And she's like, can I go to 100 today? And I said, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. She's like, yes. And I video her and I send it to her. And and the concept, maybe she still wants to get the flab from under her arms. Sure. But that right there, that 100 pounds that she just picked up and put down 5 times means more to her than anything. When can I work the prowler? When can I do that? When can I learn to do that? It becomes a whole different mindset, a whole different idea of like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Yeah. What is my real goal here? It's I had another thought as you were talking about, and it went out of my head, but it had something to do with definitely like building muscle and the capability. Oh yeah, well the bar class. So I taught a bar class. Speaking of bar classes, right? When I was at the dance studio, I taught it though as a alternative to certain exercises that kind of beat up people, right? Because it was low impact. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of older people in my class. So I aimed it as low impact work. And I was at a dance studio, so it made sense to use what I had. But when I opened my gym, I turned all my work towards the barbell training and towards my boot camp where, now we had kettlebells to use and dumbbells to use, and I could provide more for my clients. Again, low impact, right? Providing them with strength training. And so I wrote an article, a blog post about why I don't teach bar classes anymore. And
I believe that was one of your more popular ones.
Holy hell, that has gotten, it's still to this day, it is 8 years old now. Still to this day, I get comments, some mostly positive, and then they're the negative ones. And what do the negative ones all have in common? They're all based on judging and appearance. It usually is. I've had people blow smoke to me, like basically say, "Well, I'm not looking for a muscular body like you. I'm not looking for that kind of body. I'm like, I have a muscular body. Whoo, bring it on, because I've been working for that. And whatever muscular body, it seems to me I have more muscle than they would like. But it comes down to all the negative comments are always based on appearance and judging my appearance, and all the positive comments are like, thank you for doing strength training and making women stronger and it's like the negative is all about appearance and the positives are all about ability and function. And it just was like, I'm always like, God, I wish I hadn't written that blog post. And Diego's like, no, it's a good thing you did. I said, yeah, but the hate the haters are real. And it all has to do with, it all comes down to appearance. You're right. It's based on a judgment. Yeah. I don't want to look like you. Well, I okay. You're not going to. But okay.
Not with that attitude.
Now with that, it all comes down to attitude. It's all about attitude. If you have, and that's why I tell people they're going to make progress in the gym, because if they have the right attitude about why they're there, they're gonna make progress. They're gonna feel good about what they do. Those who have a poor attitude don't make progress because they're not there for the right reason. They're not there for the right reason. I'm looking at some of the notes. Being useful, a big mind shift. Not being strong, not skinny. I don't usually use that word, skinny. I don't say being strong, not skinny. I kind of always just leave the skinny part out and just talk about feeling.
I mean, it's funny because okay, so just in general, I also just don't like, and I've said this, I think, 5 times already. I'm repeating myself, but I'm just thinking about it from the other end of the spectrum. I don't like talking about people's body appearance, because how I see someone isn't necessarily going to be how they see themselves. So kind of the flip side of that is if somebody who thinks that looking lean or looking like a model or whatever is their desired outcome, and they're afraid of bulky, the flip side of that is claiming for oneself what other people term as bulky and renaming that. And you see that a lot too, I think, in strength communities where people are I'm thick, and claiming that as but that's still an appearance statement, which I still also shy away from, because I don't know, I just am much more comfortable talking about, hey, look at the weight on your bar and look what you were just able to move.
Yes.
Because the rest of it, thick, bulky, skinny, slim, however people view that is just so subjective.
Yeah, and I spent way too long, I spent way too many years, having such a poor image of myself that that doesn't come up in my talking with people. I've spent too long trying to make friends with that woman in the mirror.
And I think, that's, like you're saying initially, that's a struggle that is something that should probably be outsourced. If that's a real struggle for a person, it should be outsourced to a professional. I try and keep people focused on what their body is able to do. And it's not like I'm going to discount someone's concerns or someone's goals if they are weight related or body recomposition related. We're going to talk about healthy ways of eating, and we're going to talk about effective ways of incorporating conditioning or active recovery or more movement in their lives, so that they're burning more calories than they're consuming, slight caloric deficit, that sort of stuff. We'll talk about that, but never in terms of appearance. I generally try and steer those kind of conversations to how a person feels in their body, and keep it kind of more connected to, are they feeling comfortable in themselves? Are they feeling confident about their ability? That kind of thing. Because, that's really kind of what it comes down to a lot of times for people when they're talking about their appearance or trying to use exercise as a way to address appearance. They just want to be comfortable with themselves. Sometimes if it's a psychological comfort or discomfort, and that's really tied up with body image or just body dysmorphia or eating disorders or whatever, that's somebody else's territory.
Always. That's, and you have, and I, luckily, I haven't had to had to worry about that, but I know if I were me, how many years ago, going into a gym setting, I would hope that the person would say, you know what, you need to get some help first before I can work with you, because I was in a bad state. It was not, and like I said, in our last episode, no one was going to help me. I wouldn't talk about it. And it took strength training. It took this program, and finally, I think, me really seeing myself clearly and honestly, and said, you've got to make a change, and it's got to come from you. And until you make that change, nothing is going to make you happy, and you're not going to be able to function well. And that, I think it came down to that too. Of living, of having feeling good, because I just wasn't I didn't feel good, and I wasn't happy for such a long time, and And that's hard. It's very hard to be honest with yourself, and address that.
Yeah.
It
So
took- yeah.
just kind of tying things up, because an hour is a good amount of time.
I know, it's perfect. Well, that's our show for today, everybody. We will be back in a couple weeks with an interview with two of Rebecca's daughters, Felicia and Sadie. They're both, how old? They're 14, 13?
Oh, good Lord. They're 15. Yeah.
15. Oh my gosh. Okay, so they're 15 athletes, and we're going to talk to them about their take on
Strength
body
training.
image
And
strength training.
training.
Yeah, and this is, coming from two 15-year-old girls in 2020 versus when Rebecca and I were 15 and
Yeah.
in 1990 something.
Forever ago. another era.
So we're closing out today's podcast with once again, submit any questions, comments to us at info@5by3.com or Cornerstone Strength Maryland @gmail.com.
That's a mouthful.
I got that right this week. I got it right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to 5by3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5by3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.